Thanks for choosing my videos to watch, I very much appreciate it. Here we have 3 scary tales about lights in the sky. What horrors await? Have any of you seen lights in the sky? What were they? Please comment below. John and Sarah's laughter filled the air, but the night was too quiet. The darkness pressed in, a thick, heavy blanket smothering the world outside their car. They sang along to the radio, trying to push back the oppressive silence. Then, a flash of light. It illuminated the inside of the car in a sickly glow, casting twisted shadows across their faces. They both looked up, eyes wide with terror, as a spinning object hovered above them. It was an alien craft, a grotesque and alien thing that had no place in the world they knew. The car shook, and John and Sarah were pinned to their seats. The air thickened with pressure, and they could barely breathe. Their laughter died in their throats as the object took control of their car. Hours passed. Or was it days? They lost track of time as the craft performed experiments on them. Pain racked their bodies, and they screamed until their throats were raw. But no one came. No one heard them. Finally, the craft released them, and they found themselves on a deserted road in the middle of nowhere. They had no memories of what had happened, but they knew that something had changed. They were different now. The nightmares started soon after. John's were vivid and twisted, filled with images of the alien craft and the horrors it had inflicted on them. Sarah began hearing voices in her head, whispers that told her to do terrible things. They investigated, desperate to find answers. They discovered a secret government installation, a place where unspeakable experiments were performed on unsuspecting citizens. And there, they found the horrifying truth. The craft that had taken them had been designed by the government to capture and experiment on humans. John and Sarah knew they had to stop them. They had to expose the truth, no matter the cost. But the government was powerful, and they would do anything to keep their secrets hidden. The couple's lives were in danger, and they were hunted relentlessly. As John and Sarah delved deeper into the government's sinister agenda, they realized the full extent of their power. They were outmatched, outgunned, and outmaneuvered at every turn. But they refused to back down. They began to spread the word, sharing their story with anyone who would listen. Slowly but surely, they gained a following. People began to take notice, and soon their story became national news. The government could no longer hide their secrets. The truth was out, and the people demanded justice. The officials responsible for the experiments were arrested, and the government's involvement was exposed for all to see. John and Sarah became heroes, their bravery inspiring others to speak out against the injustices of the world. They were no longer alone in their fight, and together they created a movement that would change the course of history. The nightmares and voices faded with time, and John and Sarah were able to move on with their lives. They knew that their journey was far from over, but they were ready for whatever lay ahead. They had faced their fears and emerged victorious, and nothing could ever break their spirit again. The warm summer night air felt heavy as a group of 5 friends crept toward the legendary Area 51 in search of proof of extraterrestrial life. With each step, their hearts raced with excitement and anticipation. They had come prepared with a range of high-tech cameras and audio equipment, hoping to document any signs of UFO activity. As they drew nearer to the base, the tension in the air became palpable. The group spotted helicopters circling above and military vehicles moving back and forth on the ground. The sight of heavily armed soldiers was enough to make them reconsider their mission, but their eagerness for discovery pushed them to continue. They hid behind a rocky outcrop and set up their equipment. The sky was dark, but they could see the stars shining above. It was the perfect night for a close encounter with alien life. They waited for hours, but nothing happened. The night was silent except for the occasional rustle of nearby desert wildlife. Suddenly, the sky above them lit up with a blinding light, and a deafening hum filled the air. The group was stunned, and for a few moments, they were frozen in place, unsure of what was happening. As the light subsided, they regained their senses and turned their cameras towards the source of the disturbance. That's when they realized their mistake. Surrounded by a group of heavily armed soldiers, the group found themselves held at gunpoint. They were instructed to drop their equipment and surrender immediately. Their cameras and audio equipment were taken from them, and they were forced to their knees. Terrified and confused, the group of friends were blindfolded and thrown into the back of a military truck. They had stumbled upon something far more significant than they had anticipated, and the military was not going to let them get away. For days, they were held captive and interrogated. They were subjected to brainwashing techniques that stripped away their sense of reality and left them with only the faintest memory of who they once were. Their captors wanted to extract any information they had about their mission and intentions. The once close friends became paranoid and distrustful of one another. They could not tell what was real and what was a product of their brainwashing. They were no longer in control of their minds and bodies. They had become puppets under the control of the government. Eventually, they were released, but their freedom came at a high cost. They could never return to their normal lives. They were haunted by the memories of being captured and manipulated by the very government that was supposed to protect them. They knew too much, and they would never be safe. In the end, the group of friends realized that their journey to Area 51 was not a thrilling adventure but the beginning of their worst nightmare. They had underestimated the power and ruthlessness of the military, and now they were paying the price for their mistake. I hope you enjoy the content I upload. If you like what I'm doing, why not think about clicking on the subscribe button to keep up to date on my uploads. Thank you all for the great support. Deep in the heart of the forest, a group of bright-eyed school kids were excitedly chattering as they took their annual school trip to explore the great outdoors. The crisp morning air was filled with the sound of crunching leaves and excited giggles. The students had been looking forward to this trip for weeks, eagerly anticipating the chance to escape the confines of their classrooms and immerse themselves in nature. They had packed their bags with sandwiches and snacks, water bottles, and extra layers of clothing, ready to face any challenge the wilderness might throw their way. The forest was a dense labyrinth of towering trees and tangled undergrowth, with patches of sunlight filtering through the canopy above. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the once loud chatter of the kids began to dwindle, replaced by hushed whispers and a sense of unease. There was a strange, eerie feeling permeating the forest, as if some unseen force was watching them from the shadows. The students quickened their pace, hoping to reach their destination soon and put this uneasy feeling behind them. But then, they stumbled upon an enormous metal object buried within the jungle undergrowth. It was a UFO that had crash-landed in the middle of the forest, and their excitement quickly turned to fear when they saw the bodies lying all around it. The sight was horrific. The twisted metal of the ship was scattered around the clearing, and the dead bodies of its occupants lay in grotesque poses, as if they had been thrown from the ship with great force. The students were paralyzed with fear and shock, unable to comprehend the horror before them. Suddenly, the silence of the forest was broken by the sound of approaching helicopters. The students looked up to see black helicopters circling overhead, their blades chopping through the air with a menacing hum. They soon realized that the government had been alerted to the crash, and their arrival signaled that the situation was far more serious than they had imagined. The school kids were quickly ushered away from the crash site by the authorities, but not before catching a glimpse of strange, otherworldly creatures moving around the wreckage. Their nightmares began that night, filled with images of creatures with twisted, misshapen bodies, and the faces of the dead staring at them from the darkness. Rumors began to spread in whispers through the halls and playgrounds of the school. The students spoke of strange experiments, of government cover-ups, and of a dark, sinister presence that seemed to be lurking just beyond their vision. Some of them developed a deep, unexplainable fear, unable to shake the memory of what they had seen. Days turned into weeks, and the entire school was consumed by the horror of the crash. The students experienced inexplicable sicknesses, and many of them began to suffer from anxiety and depression. The memory of what they had seen refused to fade, and every time they closed their eyes, the image of the dead bodies surrounding the craft would spring to life in their minds, refusing to let go. The school kids never forgot the dreadful experience, and as they grew older, they continued to whisper about the crash and the strange events that followed. But for some, the fear remained, and the nightmarish sensation never left them entirely. In the years that followed, the government continued to deny any knowledge of what happened in the forest, and the incident quickly fell into the realm of mystery and urban myth. But for the school kids who had seen the crash, the memory of that terrifying day would never be erased. It would remain with them for the rest of their lives, a dark and haunting reminder of the horrors that lurked within the forest.